before I get into explaining everything I did to the ceiling, I'll have to explain what happened. So I'm looking at a finished ceiling now. It's a pretty good finished ceiling, but it's not what I initially thought I was gonna do. See, I ran into an issue with those sailrite clips. The clips I bought them about a year ago at the initial start of the van build, because I knew I didn't want to have any fasteners. I didn't want to see any ways that the ceiling or any of my panels were attached. So I got those clips. Well, a year ago they had a different manufacturing process, which I reached out to the company and they explained it to me. Because some reason they're saying that the initial clips were too strong. They were holding too well, and they had to adjust the way they make them to where now they didn't hold at all, which is odd to me. But I assume if other people were doing it for other reasons other than a ceiling, it makes sense. But I had the old panel on with, and you'll see me put this up, but it was plywood. It had my electrical on it. It had the vinyl on it. It had the foam in there. It had all my little lights, and the clips were holding it perfectly. The new clips, I had just a piece of plywood, and it was about a third of the size of the one I initially used, and it just kept falling off the ceiling. It wouldn't hold it at all. So because of that, I had to change my whole orientation, my whole way of finishing the ceiling, which turned out okay, and I'll show you it, but it's not what I planned on doing. And here's the finished ceiling. It's a little dirty from my handprints putting it up there, and I'll just wipe it down with some water, some cleaning stuff, but it's turned out pretty good. The screw points I covered up with these little screw head covers, and they look like little white rivets, so it kind of finishes it off, cleans it up, and each of the seams are connected with this kind of trim panel connector thing. So this whole concept, I didn't come up with this. I found it in another website where they did pretty much this exact thing. So I'll leave a link in the description of where I found this. But what I put up in there, I filmed the whole process of me putting up the first panel idea. And a lot of those same concept of wiring and finding the middle points of all the struts and then finding my marks to cut the plywood. I'll leave that in there so you could see that and get any other ideas from how I initially installed it. But for some reason I thought I filmed it, and I look back and I don't have any video of me putting it up, which is pretty stupid. But I put on some reflectix with some aluminum tape, some of this bubble wrap aluminum reflectix stuff, and I taped it off on the inside, filled the entire cavity, and I taped it on the edges with aluminum tape, and then I put in my Havelock wool insulation in between the struts, and then I put on my wood 1x4s with these little steel plates. So I attached the middle to my ceiling struts that are already on the van, and on either side of the strut I attached 1x4s. That way I got a real low profile, and the wood is recessed in between each of my struts. And in between, and on the fans, I put two, one on either side of the fan, and then just screwed it up through the trim holes that were already on the fan trim. And I got all my wires running through the ceiling, going where they need to go, coming out the front, the back, and the side, everywhere I need them to be. And I just put the below the Havelock wool and ran them above the wood pieces that I have in there. And on these side pieces, I don't know if you could see it, but I just attached the wood directly to all the struts. I didn't have to cut it at all. So I got one piece running the entire width as far back as it goes, and then spliced it on one and then ran it back the rest of the way, same on this side. And that gave me a point to attach the sides. The middle is where I have them cut, just so I don't lose any room in the height of the middle. So it is pretty curved now, not as curved as it initially was. And with all that being said, here are the videos of me building out the first concept of the ceiling, just because I feel like there are a lot of tips and creative ways of figuring out certain scenarios that could help you. So I'll show you that one because I don't have any video of me installing this one. There's me wiring the lights, me figuring out where or how to cut and mark the ceiling struts. So if you have any other ideas for a ceiling, I think it'll help you to watch it. But without any further ado, here's me doing that. So the struts in the ceiling, they're all different widths in between it. So what I did was I measured from this point, which is the very front of the cab, and I measured, and I have a magnetic tape measure, so I was able to stick here and I was able to measure as far as I could. I'm going to need 2 sheets of plywood to span this whole van. So on this strut right here, there will be something that I'll have to come up with to hide the seam between this end piece and this piece, which will, I think, be fine. So I got my magnetic tape and I measured to the exact center of this hole, and I did that for each strut. And those are my points where I draw a straight line across my sheet of plywood, because what's good is there's a little indentation here, and at the same time, or on the same side, the opposite side, a little indentation here, and that width is exactly 48 inches, which is 1 full sheet of plywood. So I'll have a fastener attached here, here, and these were just proof of concept, and I'm going to move them to the exact center, and one here and one here. And I'm going to do that for each strut. And I had to rack my brain a little bit about how I was going to transfer these points to the plywood, but with that little measuring to the exact center, that'll give me the exact center of these holes. And I'm going to get a piece of tape, and I'm going to tape the strut, mark out the holes, and hopefully each strut is the same. I'll double check, and that way I could just have one sheet of tape and mark out my very centers, put it on the plywood, and screw in my little clips. Easy said, hopefully it's easy done as well. So on this plywood, got my straight edges, which is the exact center of each strut, and I also measured my fan, which is 14 inches by, I guess it's a square 14 inches. And I'll cut that out, and the fan will fit right around that. And now I'm going to mark my points for my connectors. Just put a piece of tape up there, and I punctured my holes for where I want my connectors to go. And I'll just transfer these holes onto that plywood. And these are the little clips I'm using from Sailrite. They come like this, but I cut off that little nub. So if you have like a 1/2 inch sheet of plywood, you could drill a hole and then inset those, give a little more stability. But I just cut those off, sand them off, make them flush, and then screw those in. And then this piece goes into the ceiling like this, and then pushes on there. And then pressure fits. It'll be flush with the plywood. And I got all my little connectors in as far back as I need them. That was pretty tedious. So what I had to do was mark a little hole, or mark with my Sharpie every little screw hole. Go in with a little metal punch, and hammer out little indentions for each screw hole, and then go back in and drill 1/16 inch holes in every little hole. And you have to punch out the holes because that 16th inch drill bit will wander. But I got all of them in, so now will be the first test fitment. Hope it works. To inset these little pieces, I have to drill out a 1/2 inch hole, and I'm using a step-up bit and then holding a vacuum up to it so all the metal shavings don't go all over the place. But when it was installing this one, I ran out of my little clips, so now I'm going to have to wait for some to come in before I can even test fit that other piece. So hopefully they'll be here soon. I almost forgot I got to put lights up there, so we could do that as well. That was the entire reason I wanted to put the ceilings on now, was because I wanted to put the lights in there so I could start working in here and having actually some light. And the problem I was kind of figuring out was I'm not sure how far out I want, the walls / cabinets going on the walls. So finding placements for these lights. If I put 2 on each side of this fan, I don't want to cover it up any, but I really don't think it'll be an issue. So I'm just going to do 2, or I'm thinking 3 maybe in the front, 1 on either side of the fan, and then 2 going down the middle. Maybe. We'll see. These are the lights I'm going to be using. Just some 2.5 inch puck lights, and they're warm light, not cool light. I didn't like the way the cool light looked, very fluorescent-y. But they're LEDs, 12 volts. Should look good. And this is going to be the front of the van, so I got 3 lights, 1, 2, 3 in the front, 1 on either side of the fan, so 2 there. And then I just took this distance from this light to this light and then equaled it into each little cavity I got, because all the cavities where the struts are in the van are not equal. So if I just centered them with each strut, it might look a little odd, because this one is so wide and this one's so thin and that one's like medium. So I just got 21.5 inches to each exact center of the lights, and I'll continue that for the whole van. These lights called for a 2.5 inch hole. And there's my hole placements. And when you're all done, you got a nice little coaster set with jagged edges and a hole right in the center of it that's not even big enough to hold a can. But now we're going to start putting on the vinyl. What I got to go on my ceilings is the same stuff that I was using on my panels that was teal, but I'm going to be using white. So some marine grade vinyl, and what's good about this stuff is very durable, it's stretchy, so I can pull it really tight, get a nice tight ceiling with that foam underneath it, so it'll be a little plushy, but at the same time it'll hide any imperfections in the ceiling. And if it ever gets dirty, you just wipe it with a cloth or something. I don't know. It's very easy to clean. So these little holes, I'm just going to cut little X's because the lights I got push up through it and then grab the back side of the plywood, so it'll hold it the vinyl tight. This one, it's just a slip in there. The fan, the little trim piece just slips into there. There's nothing grabbing it from the back. So I'm gonna cut out this one and then actually staple this hole to the edge of this just to make it tighter, because if I feel like if I cut out this hole, then my ceiling would kind of droop with that other trim piece for the fan going up underneath it. So I just want it real tight. So I'm going to cut this one out and then staple it. And that's the back side, all cleaned up, all stapled. All right. Next I'm going to wire these lights. And how you connect your ceiling lights is with parallel connections, meaning you have all your positives connected and then all your negatives are connected. What that does is if any of these short, or if any of them malfunction or anything like that, all your other lights will continue to work. So this is where I'm going to connect my circuit box coming off these. And basically how all these are connected is three ways, you know. Negative connects to a negative. So imagine this as a negative and positive are just going around the entire board. And then you just tap into the negative line and then the positive line. So I just got them on there with little twisty connectors. And this is where I'm gonna cut it somewhere in there. And this is where the next panel will attach to. I'm gonna go in some electrical tape, wrap up all my little connections just to make sure they don't ever come loose, and then lay it down with some aluminum foil tape. Like that. And I'd like to mention, before I put any of these lights in, I did check to see if they worked. So now everything's stuck, everything's wired. Let's test it out. Got me a ceiling. Pretty neat. I cut this vent down so it fits in there. And now that it has black screws, I'm thinking I might paint this the same color, like a matte black as these are. Just a little accent on the ceiling. I think that might look good. View from the cab side looking down it. Well, I got I put some Reflectix bubble wrap aluminum foil stuff on with some aluminum tape around all the edges. And I'm gonna do that instead of that 1/4 inch aluminum foam that I got. Well, I hope that helped you out a little bit. Thanks for watching, and stay connected, because up next I am going to try to show you my electrical setup just as a walkthrough. And I hope that helped you. Thanks for watching. See you later.